Well, Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan took to the stand for the second day of his testimony before the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into state capture. Gordhan relayed that it was clear that soon after his appointment as finance minister in 2015, the appointment was a mistake for those enabling state capture. He also claimed he was subjected to harassment and bullying aimed at chasing him out of the office. But for more on the evidence that was brought forward in his testimony this morning and throughout the course of the day, we are joined by SABC's Mzwandile Mbeje, and joins us in studio. Very good evening to Mzwandile.
Yes.
It's been a very, very long day for you, and some bold statements coming from Pravin Gordhan in the evidence that he brought forward. But what was definitely a talking point was his description of the harassment that he said he endured in the administration. Take us through that.
Absolutely. It's been a long day, as you have said. In fact, it's been a long 2 days and still counting, because he's coming back tomorrow, so he's not done yet with his testimony. Of course, it's been very elaborate how he has been painting the picture of really how everything happened. When he was talking about that kind of pressure and harassment, remember, after the removal of Minister Nene, so he had to step in, obviously, following that 4-day stint of Minister Des von Rijn. I mean, he says, barely a month into office, and then he started getting calls from the Hawks boss, and then, of course, throughout that the tenure, so it was very, very difficult for him. He says because he feels those really who were interested in really running with the state capture had been kind of like frustrated because he was having none of it.
Now take us through also his conversations and his recommendations that he had with the former President Jacob Zuma, with his issues of SAA, the nuclear deal, as well as what was happening at SARS.
It was very interesting, Shante, what he said, because remember when he was reappointed to this position, he says before he got that formal call from the then president, and then he was called by Jesse Duarte, the deputy SG, and of course the then deputy president Cyril Ramaphosa, to say please don't refuse that kind of appointment. And then they sat together with then the president and then they spoke about this. He said, well, there are just a few issues that I needed to raise with you. And then he then mentioned them because I think for him, they were very crucial. He said he needed to look to make sure that the issue at SAA and its chairperson are dealt with. And of course, the issue of nuclear deal, which had been ongoing, so is also looked into. And of course, the relations with the SARS boss, Tom Moyane at the time. So those were the things, basically, he said when he took office, he wanted to look at. And I mean, when you look at what happened afterwards, you can see why perhaps he was very concerned about this.
Yeah, speaking of relations, let's also talk about his relations, or the lack thereof, according to him, with his association with the Guptas. He mentioned that he had seen them at passing in cricket matches, but also said that vendors selling ice creams, would also be present in a cricket match. So that necessarily doesn't determine a meeting. Take us through his stance and his claims with him knowing the Guptas.
I mean, if there's one thing that he was so very clear on, I mean, he said it repeatedly. He said he had never met the Guptas in a formal setup of a meeting. It's like if you invite someone to come and discuss a few issues. He said, of course, at a cricket match, so he did bump into them. But then there was a meeting that he spoke about where he was having an official meeting with an Indian billionaire because he was a potential investor. But in terms of his own recollection, he says he doesn't remember seeing the Guptas there. But of course, his advisor then, the current DG, said one of the Gupta brothers was there. So, but he says in terms of the relations, I mean, he made a very clear example, the TNA SABC breakfast show. Every time when the Minister of Finance would have addressed Parliament the next day, so he will then be hosted for TNA breakfast, SABC breakfast show. So he said, I cancelled that because I wanted nothing to do with this. So if people don't see that I really had no relations with those people, so I don't understand why.
Well, just post the State Commission of Inquiry this afternoon, as it concluded, we saw the EFF also holding a press briefing just outside of Park Town this evening. Julius Malema, the president of the EFF, had also made very strong statements about Pravin Gordhan, insistent that he is involved in state capture, also laying claims to him being a racist and also being a part of taking or axing a key black excellence, as Malema described it, out of SOE. So just take us through his press briefing.
If you look at what Julius Malema said outside, and because there's been accusations and counter accusations. I mean, Minister Gordhan said those who really have issues about me must come here and tell the people. And then people have been saying, well, EFF, come forward. And then interestingly, EFF is saying, we want all of them to go before the state capture. We want to be the last one because we want to expose their lies. So basically, that kind of statements that were uttered outside accusing Mr. Gordhan of all sorts of things. So we hope when the time comes, they'll be able to be tested.
Thank you very much for giving us the details on what exactly happened today. SABC's Mzwandile Mbeje on day 2 of the Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan's testimony at the Zondo Commission of Inquiry into State Capture. We're staying with